in those kinds of situations. When I quote the violent passages, that's because those are the final marching orders of the Quran. There's nothing absurd if we're asking whether the Quran is a book of peace to ask what are the final marching orders? What is its final message about what people are supposed to do? And that's very important. If the Quran for 1,000 pages called for nothing but peace and tolerance, and on the last page said, by the way, fight everyone who disagrees with you, that wouldn't be a book of peace, right? Those are the final marching orders.
Our Christian friends come to us with this like chip on the shoulder saying, looks like your religion is violent, your Muhammad is violent, and our Isa, peaceful. So now we have to turn the tables around, right? Say, okay, now you have some questions about Islam, you have some questions about our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and about this battle or that event or that situation. You know, all of these are good questions, and I'll be glad to answer those questions for you. But first, will you permit me to ask you a question? And now you ask them the question. When it is said that Jesus was the Messiah, what did this mean? We know from the Quran that Isa alayhi salam is called Al-Masih Isa ibn Maryam, the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary. Now in the Bible too, he is called the Messiah. Now what is meant by Messiah here? What is meant by Messiah? In the Bible, it is being shown that Isa alayhi salam, by being the Messiah, that meant that he will institute the law of God on earth. That means he will bring a Sharia. Nowadays, our Donald Trump, south of the border, is worried about Muslims and Sharia. Well, this was a Sharia that he would have brought there. And we know from the Quran, لَكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرَاطًا وَمِنْهَاجًا. For each of you, we have appointed a Sharia and a manhaj, a path to follow. So they have a path, they have a Sharia. And that Sharia is in the Bible. And Isa alayhi salam, by coming as the Messiah, according to the New Testament, he would have instituted all of this. He would have instituted the Sharia of the Bible on earth. He would have thrown away the Roman rule, and he would have instituted the law of God. This is, according to the Bible, what he was supposed to do. But of course, he was not successful in doing that according to the Bible's own narrative. And then Christians adopted the idea that when he comes back, he will do it. To the extent that they have a book in the Bible known as the Book of Revelation. That is the last book of the Bible. And in that book of Revelation, it's called Revelation. Sometimes they also call it Apocalypse, which means like something like the revelation. It's also like the end time, what will happen at the end time. So in that book it is described that when Isa alayhi salam comes back, he will have a sword coming out of his mouth. Now we know that in, if you're looking at a Tarzan movie or something like that, maybe Tarzan has a dagger in his mouth, right? So in this case, it is said that Isa alayhi salam will have a sword in his mouth. His tongue itself will be the sword, like the sword is coming out of his mouth. And with that sword, he will slay his enemies. That's at the end. That's the final analysis. So now, if in the final analysis he will come back and he will slay his enemies, then in what sense do you say that he is the Prince of Peace? That means you have here two conflicting ideas about Isa alayhi salam. One idea is that he's the Prince of Peace. The other idea is that he's a man of war. And in fact, this idea that he'll be a man of war, this is the final analysis. So even if a person is peaceful for a time, but then in the end he fights, well then in the end, that's what characterizes him, right? He is a fighter in the end, even though he was peaceful for a time.